for foster dog families and for new adopters. But I'm Monica Mosier. I'm the president of Private School Pups. We are a charity that provides grants and other resources for dogs who would otherwise be euthanized. And we are with the experts of Zoom Room in New Albany, sharing the best of their brain power on all things dog training. So I'll let them introduce themselves and their business as well before we kind of kick it off with some questions and information for everyone.
So my name's Lisa Poulin, and you already said we're with Zoom Room New Albany.
And I'm Miranda Morris.
Great. Well, we will start off with, I know in working with a lot of different fosters, a lot of new adopters, everyone's trying to do the right thing. And oftentimes with foster situations, there's a resident dog already in the home, right? We want to have more love. We have more love to give, more dogs to save. So, and a lot of these fosters are concerned about the interaction that their resident dog will have with the foster dog. And oftentimes, when they have tried to bring a new dog into their environment, it hasn't gone as well as they sort of expected. And this sometimes causes the foster families to give up fostering altogether or to be hesitant to bring another dog into the home because of that interaction, the stress involved with it, both for them and the new dog as well as the foster. So it'd be great to hear your perspective on how do we set ourselves up for success? How do we set our resident dog and foster dogs up for success as we sort of blend these families?
I think the most important thing is that you can't just bring another dog in and just turn them loose. There has to be some thinking, some preparation. We've had more than 100 fosters through our house, and I can't think of a time that I've ever just went, oh yeah, they're happy, let them go. I think the new dog coming in could be overwhelmed, scared, could shut down. Is not going to be really comfortable with you, your house, or your family, and definitely not immediately with another dog. And your resident dog that's their space. And so imagine that you come home and there's a stranger in the middle of your living room. There's some adjustment to get used to. And so I think having a plan for keeping them in separate spaces, but able to see each other, smell each other. If you're using crates, I would recommend putting a blanket in each crate and then swapping them nightly so that their smells are intermixing. And really just taking the time to have good interactions with both. And so if you're in a crate or on the other side of a gate, maybe you're treating both of them at the same time. So, hey, when I see this dog, good things happen. When I see this dog, good things happen. And so you're creating that positive relationship between the two of them. I think are the big things for me. How about you?
Giving it more than just a day. You need to really take the time to develop that relationship within the household. So we have that 3-3-3 rule for the adoptions, but we also need to make sure we're doing that for our fosters. So usually, Lisa talked about it, them feeling overwhelmed in those 3 days where they may be shut down, they may be trying to hide. Usually it takes them 3 days to kind of get acclimated, and then we start to get 3 weeks into that period. And so they're starting to develop that routine and their personalities are starting to show. And so, when you're fostering, you could be in there for a little bit of that long haul until they can get that good family. And so we see that personality, and then we can get that personality out to their adopters, and you can start to see like, hey, they're really trainable and they can bond very well. So it's important that we just don't say, well, 3 days and the dog is a is a nightmare, so to speak. And that way your fosters can be very successful with that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lisa.
Another thing to add is really thinking about the introduction of two dogs. Doing parallel walks is really a great thing, and thinking about the dogs on the outside of the humans, and then slowly moving one dog to the inside and then eventually being able to walk with both dogs in the inside. But taking the time to just let them get used to each other.
Great. Can you elaborate just a little more on the 3-3-3 rule for those who just aren't as familiar with, so they can remember, ingrain it, tattoo it on themselves so they remember each time they go into this scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. So those first 3 days is really when they're going to be usually overwhelmed, and that's when you may have potty accidents, or they may shut down or may hide, because this is all new to them. You got to think about what their journey has been thus far. And then those first 3 weeks, they start getting used to our routine. You'll get some changes in behavior. You'll get some of their personality coming out. And then it really takes dogs, the 3-3-3 rule obviously is 3 months, but it could be longer before you start to see that they get a sense of security, that I'm okay here, that I can start getting in with my routine and understanding it. And that's usually when your trust starts to build.
So what are like the essential tools that you would recommend, or items at home as you're bringing a foster dog, that you should just be prepared to have based on whatever scenario is going to potentially occur, just setting your home up for success?
I think a quiet space that they feel like is their own, that they can, because you might have those dogs that are hiding or shut down, or you don't know their journey. So having a space that they feel like they're safe, and a space where you can interact with them one-on-one, I think is important. A baby gate to separate resident dogs, or maybe even children, from the new dog that you're bringing in, until you start to understand and move that relationship a little forward. If you have a resident dog that's been reactive before or has issues before, maybe even pet corrector, or something that's going to gain their attention if there happens to be trouble. And I think the baby gate, one, for keeping them separate during the day until they're fully comfortable with each other. But also it's a great tool that if there happens to be a fight, you can usually get a baby gate in between them and kind of back one up and close the gate into a room so that you can get one, into a different space. Anything else? Treats. Lots of treats.
lots of
Reward
treats.
everything. Reward every positive interaction.
Leashes available too.
Yeah, I would always have a leash handy.
I like to have the new dog experiencing things with me as well, so they can be around and I can treat good behavior while they're with me.
Mm-hmm. And if it's a puppy,
Go ahead.
as we say, if it's a puppy, I may even think about a leash that I could tether, so that they're just kind of, attached to me as we roam the house and working on some of that behavior. And really, it's much easier to capture the behaviors that you want when they're always with you.
So pulling on that thread a little bit on keeping the new dog or puppy close to you, can you explain a little bit more about tethering and how to set it up and what to do, what that looks like?
So there's a few different ways that you could do that. One is like if, for instance, if we're working on potty training, if we don't have them under supervision, it can be a little hard to catch those puppies if they're having free roam of everything. So I can keep them close. Sometimes I can get leashes that can wrap around my waist. And when I start to see that puppy circling, I can go right out and get them out there on the leash and tell them to go potty and reward as soon as they do their business and come back in, and they can go in their little exercise pen and have some playtime. The other thing too is anytime like they're tethered to me. Like if they're doing a sit behavior, they're doing a down behavior, I can reward that. And so that can build up those behaviors that we want to continue to see rather than the jumping behaviors that they may be experiencing. I can keep capturing those behaviors because there are different behaviors that we deem problematic that tend to be rehearsed more, and we don't pay attention to the behaviors that we continually want. So if we can reinforce the behaviors that we really want our puppies and our dogs to do, even the adult dogs, we can get them to be more successful and stay in those adoptable homes as well.
It gives us the opportunity to capture them being good. So just like with our children, the more we can reward them doing the right thing, the less we're going to see of the problematic behaviors.
Now, have you ever come across a scenario in which a foster dog is not food motivated? I've only had a few. They've mostly been mill dogs, but just talking through strategies where sometimes you can't get a treat or a reward into a puppy or a foster that's just so terrified. Are there other ways to reward or things that you would recommend as what to give as that high value like indication, or is it best just to let things settle a little bit until they're comfortable enough to take treat rewards or other forms of rewards?
I mean, for me, if the dog's completely shut down, like some of the mill puppies, it's space is the best thing that you can give them, and time. It needs to be on their own terms to warm up to you. And so you can certainly toss treats. Trying to get them to come up and get close enough to take it out of your hand is probably not going to happen for those dogs. But even if you can think about meal times and try to get to a more a hand feeding situation, and I just mean not putting it in a bowl and walking away, but not truly out of your hand, but you can toss it and get it to where they don't have to come in your vicinity to take it, and try to relieve some of that pressure. But there are definitely some dogs that that are more toy, prey, ball motivated, and I think you can use all of those. So we have a handout here that's called Nothing in Life is Free. And it's never about withholding. It's really just thinking through all of our interactions with our dog and how do we incorporate training into those interactions. If we make training part of our normal routine, then it tends to stick a lot faster.
Yeah.
Great. So you had mentioned pet correctors for resident dogs. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit, on like tools or how to best implement that, or just recommendations? Because I know, some of us just knee jerk into screaming no across the room and interjecting ourselves, but that's not always the right approach to something. So,
Well, I mean, we never want to jump in, right? Because more often it's going to be redirected to us.
right.
And so, and you're really not, sometimes if you try to pull dogs apart, you're just, they're just biting down harder. And so putting something in visually, I mean, I think a baby gate's the easiest, but even, tossing a towel, if you can get over one of them's eyes, something that breaks that, or pet corrector is just that, like a canned air, it's a loud noise that, is just going to make them stop and look. It just kind of gives you that half a second to get something in between them, and preferably not your hands or your body. Anything else?
I've unfortunately have seen some dog fights. I mean, I've even used a leash to get in between even their mouths. So if they're already in biting mode, you get that through in between, but you try not to get in between two dogs that are, you don't want to use any of your hands because they redirect towards you as best. So any type of tool that you can stay as far as away, so that way they're not going to bite you, because accidents happen. And so you just want to be prepared for things like that. And hopefully it doesn't, because you have made a plan to slowly introduce your dogs. So I always have leashes ready to go. I have that baby gate ready to go. I have something to make a noise to see if that can just startle them and get them out of that space.
And it's most often not going to be our voice screaming at them.
Yeah.
They
They really,
everyone
when they're,
hear that? We need a tool outside of our voices. Be ready.
Yeah, that's not going to be different enough to get their attention. That's something they hear. And so it's not, we can be as high pitched or as loud or as angry as we want. It's not 90% of the 99% of the time probably is not going to be enough to get their attention in a fight.
you being loud and screaming, and if you're hitting the dog, that's also not going, that's going to cause more chaos. The biggest thing you have to remember is you're going to try not to panic, and you're trying not to cause more chaos to the situation. You have to remember what tools you have to keep yourself safe, and then go, okay, I have leashes, I have this baby gate, and I have something to put in between them or cause a noise. I've even tried dog beds. Sometimes I can grab a dog bed and see if I can get anything in between to help separate the dogs.
Okay. So say I have this interaction, something happened where I misgauged the dogs being ready. A fight does occur. Okay, I'm still committed to having a foster in my home, or even if this is an interaction with, say, a neighbor's dog that came over to visit, how do I restart, right? Because, we don't want to give up. There's certainly, like, accidents happen. The dogs don't forever hate each other in most circumstances. So how do I reset to start to build a positive relationship between those two dogs again?
I think for me, they need to be completely separated for a period of time and monitor. So some fights happen and the dogs are not visually reactive. And so they can be reintroduced quicker. I would definitely go back to some parallel walks, go back to rewarding both dogs in the presence of them. When the dogs are present, rewarding both. But oftentimes after a dog fight, they're visually reactive. And so you want to shut down them being able, and Miranda talked about it a little bit, that reinforcement. So the more they get to practice. So if they're visually reactive and they get to keep rushing the gate and reacting to each other, you're just going to continue that fight. So we need to disconnect them seeing each other at all until they're past that visual reactivity, and then start, just like when you did when they first came in, you're just essentially starting over. Anything else?
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's slow. It's slow, and you take your time. It's not worth the risk of a new interaction. So
and if it's a first time fight, you want to take a look and reassess the situation. Like, hey, what was in that environment when that fight took place? Was it over something, in the environment? Was there anything in that environment that sparked that fight? Or was it that they looked at each other and that's what sparked it? You have to kind of really analyze what was going on before we were like, okay, yeah, the dog was quote unquote aggressive towards the other dog. Or was it, oh, there was some food in between the gate and that's what sparked it? We got to really analyze what was going on at that time and then figure out what our plan is going forward.
that's a great point. Yeah. Was there anything different about that interaction?
Yeah, so that leads me into my next question. Like, I know resource guarding is always a thing. Like, there's a toy on the ground that the dogs fight over, or I don't know, it's a person or whomever is different, whatever isn't different in that environment. But I know resource guarding comes up a lot, and would love to just hear your take on. I mean, first off, like, what is resource guarding exactly? How to identify it? And then most common ones that you come across, how to start working past that, even from like an individual dog standpoint, or if you have two dogs in the same environment where there's resource guarding on one or both parts.
Hmm.
I know it's a hard one, and it can be a call your expert situation, right? Degrees of resource guarding.
So, I mean, they're guarding because they don't want to lose what they have, right? And so the number one mistake we make is to take it away. And that just tells them they should have protected it more. So if it's you and you're moving, towards your dog, or you're reaching, stop. If your dog starts growling or giving you signals and you're staring, stop. Initially, you don't want, well, I should say safety first. If you think that your dog's going to escalate, or your foster dog is going to escalate, then, retreat. But that gives the dog a win, right? They growled, they stared, they did something, and you backed away and they kept it. So the better thing is, if they're actively growling, then freeze. Wait for them to relax, and then continue about doing something else. The other thing you can do is drop something more valuable. So I say it all the time, but if you're eating a White Castle and you're starving, you're going to protect it. You're going to eat it. But what if somebody comes along next to you and sets down filet mignon? Your White Castle probably doesn't mean anything anymore. So from the dog's perspective, drop something of higher value and start teaching them to trade, so that when they're resource guarding something, if something better is coming, they're less likely to protect what they're trying to keep. Does that make sense?
Yes, for me it does. And so I always will, until you get a trainer to help you with that, you want to add some management to that, because if you have children or a foster that is with your resident dog that's doing it, or vice versa, it's good for them to be crated with their valuable item until you start implementing some training for the resource guarding. Because it's always, you're going to be working on that high value trade for that item. And whether that is a dog to dog thing, human to dog, or it could be both, because you're going to be working on that. But management's key. And I always suggest to clients, do not take management away too soon. Too many clients take away management options away too soon. Keep it there until we are very sure we're ready to have it go. So crates are really great, especially with children and other dogs. So that way, hey, they're trying to enjoy a bone. That way another kid is walking along. Oh, he's in his crate. We're not going to have a bite risk on our hands for that dog that is enjoying their food, their toy with something frozen in it. And it gives that dog less of a chance to rehearse what we're trying to help help them with that resource guarding. So.
Okay, great.
And when they're in the crate, and when you're giving that, whatever that good thing is to them, and they're in their crate, they should be left alone. We shouldn't approach. We shouldn't allow others to approach. Let them truly have their time with that special thing in their crate.
And one note to make of too is, one of the things I tell people to do is stop putting your hand in their food bowl. Don't do that. That's not how we fix resource guarding. Don't do it. I don't like when people come over and start messing on my plate to try to get things off of my plate. Don't do it to your dog. It's annoying.
Does it help? I've heard the recommendation that feeding the meal from your hand to get a resource garter instead of putting the food down is helpful. Is that true? If you have a true food resource garter?
It's better if you're holding the bowl and you're feeding this way and you're asking for things, but not putting the food bowl down and saying, here, my hand is all up in your face and in your mouth. That's what's annoying about it. But when you actively have the bowl and then you're asking, you're creating a better experience for that dog or that puppy.
And hand feeding in general is just a great training tool, right? If you're working on training and practicing hand feeding through their breakfast or their dinner, while you're working on all those behaviors is a great training opportunity.
Good recommendation. Well, we've talked a lot about crates, and I know I hear a lot of feedback, especially with new foster dogs coming out of a living in a kennel situation where there's high emotions and thoughts on, oh, I don't want to put this dog back in a crate. There can be sometimes crate reactivity, just hesitation from individuals feeling that crates are inhumane to dogs in general as well. So just talk us through just crates in general, how to set dogs up for success in crate, making it truly a happy space, especially for some of those dogs coming out of a kennel environment.
That's a big one. So
Yeah.
I think first of all, everyone has to get it out of their head. The word crate is not a cage. It's so think of it more like their bedroom, their den, their safe space. They're a place where they can go and not have to be on guard or worrying about what's coming at them from any other side. It's safety. It should be safety. With that being said, if you have a dog that doesn't enjoy the crate, then you need to make the crate something good. So think about what are they going to go in there and enjoy without closing the door. Just how do we create the positive association with the crate? So it can be anything from, a very special high value reward that they're going to go in there and enjoy. Again, doors open. It isn't to force them in or lock them in. It's to create a positive place where they want to be, where they want to relax, where they can let their guard down. And so you can do that. You can give them, anything that's a non-choking hazard unless you're going to be there. But one of my favorite is a lick mat. Licking is calming for dogs. So if you take a lick mat, most of them you can hole punch in the side and you can put something on it, canned dog food, baby food, yogurt, peanut butter, whatever you want, whatever the dog likes, freeze it, zip tie it onto the side of the crate. So they have to go in the crate to enjoy it. They can't go in the crate, grab it and run out. They're going to enjoy it in the crate. Again, doors open and just let them have something happy happen in the crate. And so, and then keep repeating until you can slowly close the door a little bit, close it a little bit more, and then eventually working your way up to once the door is fully closed, they could care less because whatever's happening inside of the crate is so much better than worrying about whatever that door is doing.
Yeah, I toss their kibble in there. I'll put, when they're not looking, there might be magic treats that happen in there. You never know when you might need to use that kennel. I mean, your dogs are going to get kenneled if you take them to grooming. Vets need them to stay calm and not stressed when you take them to a vet. Also, too, I mean, I know Ohio, we don't have very many natural disasters, but if you move to some place that have a natural disasters, you're going to need that kennel. And they might need to be there for a while. So I always say crating is some place that your dogs are going to be safe in. And just like we have rooms in the house, they need their own room. And so we know that if my dog is in a crate, I know where they're at, and I know that they're going to be safe there.
Great.
And I think Something else to think about, especially if you're newly crate training. So if you notice that your dog, your puppy has something that's really, really special that they love, save it. And they only get it in their crate. So my dogs have this one chew that they like, but what's nice about it is that the minute my hand touches it, everybody flies in their crates and lays down because they've never ever had it anywhere else and they love it. So they know as soon as I touch it, that's it. Everybody runs for their kennels. So, creating that association too with something they love is nice. So I know, within a minute I can have all my dogs in their crates.
I think you touched on a really great point. It may take some time with foster dogs, but patience. And I see a lot of people use crates only when they're leaving or to lock the dog in, just making sure that it's a space that they know it's not just when they go in the crate, they know it's being locked, they know their person's leaving. It should be more than just that tool, which I think is often lost on people.
I think the crate, it needs to be open and available all day. But you should also close those crate doors when you're home. Dogs learn our routines really fast. And their anxiety starts from the moment our routine starts. So if you think about if we take a shower every day before we go to work, well, the minute we touch our clothes or grab for a towel, right? That's when for dogs that have separation anxiety, that's when it starts. So the anxiety around being crated will be the same. Like sometimes they just need to go in, close the door, and you're going to go make dinner. Or, you're going to go take a shower and they're going to go in their crate. It can't just always be when you're leaving, because then you've created, maybe not on purpose, but you've created a negative association with their crate.
That's a great point. So on that note, I have a dog. I'm working on crating. We're even crating when I'm inside walking around, and they are screaming their heads off, whining, crying, barking in the crate. What do I do? Do I just open the crate door, let them out? Do I let them bark it out? It's driving me crazy. Like what's the best approach for solving some of that anxiety, barking, whining behavior?
I'd say you close the crate door too fast. They weren't
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
Number one.
Okay, so backing it up, we got some.
Yeah. So you
positive
got to start over.
association. Start over.
You got to start over and create that association before you close the gate. If you've closed it or you have no choice, they have to be in there. You need to find things that are comforting for them, something they can lick, self-soothe. But if it's all possible not to leave them in there when they're that stressed, they should come out.
I think that's the hard part for some of these foster situations. It's making these calls. Like if, I'm a single person living at home, I have 2 dogs, I need to keep them separated. The new foster dog doesn't enjoy a crate, and I have to leave for work. What do I do? I mean, I could leave the new foster in a room, but I'm unsure if they'll break through the door, what the behavior is there. You know, what's the scenario? What's the bit? Like, what should I do? Right. And I sometimes struggle with that answer because sometimes, like you said, you don't have a choice. You really have to say the safest thing for everything in the house is a crate. However, we haven't had enough time to associate all the positive feelings with the crate. I'm not sure if you have any advice or guidance there, but I mean, that is the day-to-day reality for some individuals in the given circumstance.
I mean, I think for me in that situation would be perfect for, a frozen lick mat zip tied to the crate. I wouldn't leave it down on the ground for dogs like that can chew, but if you can zip tie it to the crate door so they have something to lick, I think that's a good alternative. There are toys, like the popsicle, some things like that are made for licking, and you don't have to worry about them in the crate. So finding something like that for them to do. Now it's very possible if they're that stressed that they may not touch it, but at least you've given them something that can be self-soothing.
But the key thing here is that they have to make crate training a priority, right? So they have to be practicing, throughout the day. So that way that dog or that puppy is getting some form of interaction with the crate and not just like, oh, okay, it's 15 minutes before I leave. Now I'm going to put you in there. We have to be able to start getting them going in and out, and then slowly building the duration while I could just be present. And then over time, I'm going to try to start disappearing around the corner or something. I can't just expect that dog who's experiencing some of that anxiety or panic to be gone for 4 hours. I have to build up to that time. And so I think that's what may frustrate fosters and adopters, because they're ready to just keep on going with their normal life. But what they haven't realized is now that they have a new family member that needs a little help.
Yep. So I think that's good for us all to remember as we work through the journey of fostering, is we have to have a plan. We can't just assume it's going to be life as usual, being realistic with the expectations, knowing that it will resolve. We just have to take time and effort into it. We just can't set the dog up for failure. And I'm making a mental note for myself. If we have our own resident dogs, if they are not crate trained, that probably should be the first step before bringing in another foster dog potentially to the home situation, or some sort of easy separation there for everyone involved.
Yes. If your resident dog isn't crate trained, and then all of a sudden you're bringing a foster and creating them both, you've just created a negative association with that foster dog with your resident dog. Because, oh my gosh, I see this dog and I have to go stay in here. So if you're using a crate for the foster, then your resident dog should be comfortable in there as well.
The last question from my end, and thank you so much for your time, is, well, I guess there's two. So when you bring a foster dog home, I lied, it's a bonus. When you bring a foster dog home, like, what's the best? Should you keep everyone separate? Some people say you should go for, before you bring anyone inside the house, you should bring the resident dog out and you should go on that walk together. Would you recommend a walk together off-site, off property, or would you recommend bringing the new foster in just in a separate environment in the house? Like, this is what you should do, bringing the dog in.
To me, it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to meet off-site and do a nice walk together. And then when you bring the foster, do another walk outside before you just bring the dog in. Because essentially, if you have that resident dog, you're bringing a new dog right inside, and they're going to go, oh my gosh, there's a dog inside my house. And some fosters don't have the opportunity to just have a backyard, right? So the walk in their neighborhood could be a great place for them to start. So that way it's not an absolute shock to that resident dog that, okay, now this dog is coming in and coming right in. So having, a meeting completely in a neutral zone can be very helpful. And then just that quick little walk before that dog goes into their territory, so to speak, can help alleviate that shock that dog's going to experience once that foster goes into their home.
I would agree. I think if it's possible for them to meet off-site, I know sometimes emergencies happen and it's not always doable, but if the foster could take their dog to Franklin County and do that, that meeting there before bringing them home, I think it's beneficial. But I definitely would always have the meeting space outside of the home. And that could just be the fosters coming in, and so we're going to meet in the front yard and, walk around the neighborhood real quick or something. If you can't go to a neutral space, at least get out to the sidewalk and, take a walk there before they just walk in the house.
Okay, for real, my last question. And it's just all things aside, what we talked about, like one thing that you wish new adopters, fosters would do. Like it could be just last words or something that we missed or pet peeve, even just from each one of you, just one last thought.
I mean, for me, it's just kind of what we've been talking about is make a plan. I like to, most even just generalized pet parents, write it out. Write your plan out, because that can really help gauge what you're actually doing for not only your resident dog, like what is your enrichment plan? What does that look like? What does your training plan look like? What does your play plan look like? And then you can then gauge like, well, okay, this is what my resident dog needs. Well, now what does my foster dog need? Because those needs will probably look a little different, because you're essentially bringing this dog in that maybe shut down for a few days. So give space. So make these plans so that way your resident dog's needs are going to be met and that foster dog's needs are going to be met.
For me, it's patience. It's allow that dog time to decompress. Oftentimes they're coming from, less than ideal situations. Sometimes they're coming from, they were taken from the only home they've ever known or given up from the only home they've ever known. And so they're sad, they're shut down, they're scared, they could be hungry. There's a million things that could be, happening with them. So give patience. Let them decompress. Let them, just as we would process our feelings, give those dogs time to process and understand what's happening to them while you're trying to love and support them, without feeling like, just because that dog doesn't come up and snuggle with you on day one doesn't make it a bad dog. Give it time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for your time. And for anyone listening, I encourage you highly to go to Zoom Room, New Albany's website. Check out their services. Obviously, you can see a lot of great expertise within the organization, tons of training packages, and all those treats, goodies we talked about can also be purchased, as you can see in the background, at their store. So check them
Never a
out.
shortage of those here in our pockets, our coats.
Exactly. So for your resident dogs, for your foster dogs, and as always, you can visit Private School Pups page for more information on how to be successful in your journey. And as always, please donate if you can. All of our resources go to rescue dogs in need. So we appreciate everyone taking the time, and have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Monica.
Okay.